Hello and welcome to Learn with VKK. My name is Krithika Krishna and I'm an English language coach. And in this particular video lesson today, I bring to you common errors that I often come across in IELTS writing section. This particular lesson is pertaining to writing task 2, which is an essay. So it is going to be equally important for all the people who are taking academic IELTS or even general IELTS. So let's get started and understand what are these common mistakes and how can we avoid them. So mistake number one, and very common in fact, is the use of contractions. So those of you who are wondering what contractions mean, these are words, the actual words which have been contracted, kind of short forms. And to be very precise, what are these short forms? For example, you want to write it is not acceptable, and you tend to write it isn't acceptable. For instance, words like isn't, doesn't, won't, I'm. So these are words which should not be used in writing task 2 especially. The reason being that its usage tends to be informal in nature. And when we are writing essays, we need to establish a formal tone throughout. Therefore, you need to avoid this. But yes, some of you who are generalized candidates may be wondering that we've been using this. Why is it wrong? So let me tell you that it's only to ensure that there is a degree of formal expression here, and it can definitely be used only and only at one of the categories of writing, that is when you're writing informal letters. Only in that case, please do not use it either for report writing task of yours or even for essays, owing to the fact that it is going to sound heavily informal. So those of you who might have come across statements like this, that I'm writing to let you know, it is right, but only for informal letters. That means when you're writing a letter to your friend. So again, common mistake number one is contraction. What next? Now, another most visible kind of error that I come across is the use of you and we in essays. To quote an example, as we all know, as we all are aware, if you talk about, if you look at, if you do this, if you do that. So what is wrong here? Well, you and we is more used when there are direct speeches. For example, I am talking to you, and at this moment there is a conversation being established, and this particular pronoun you or even we is often used in conversation. And right now when we are sending a written response, it is to a reader, and it is again considered informal because it will sound like you're delivering a dialogue. So what can be done instead, and how can we avoid you and we? Write more passively to ensure that your presentation is sounding formal. So perhaps if you want to write as we all are aware, which I feel we are aware we need not write, but then at times it is out of an emphasis that you want to lay. Possibly you can write that it is a known fact, or if you want to write you can see something or you can observe something, you can possibly write it is observed, it is seen, it is noticed, it is witnessed. So there are alternatives. Basically, I want you to avoid the use of you and we in your written responses. Again, this is applicable for your essays that I'm talking about. Now, another mistake. Um, a lot of people, when they prepare, they know that in the essay you have an introduction paragraph, you have a body paragraph, two or three, and then you have to conclude. So primarily when people tend to begin their essays, we always see people copying from different templates. They tend to memorize sentences from one part or the other, and they try to fix it in the essays that they are writing. Although when you're trying to learn something, maybe if it is a word or an expression, there is nothing wrong. But then when you're writing your IELTS task 2, you need to ensure that when the reader reads it, you don't tend to fix up sentences deliberately. So number one, don't copy from templates. There are a lot of online resources. I mean, myriad online resources, and people tend to go through them, read them, and even memorize them, which is not right. It's an English language test, and you do use language. You don't have to copy paste from something that you just mucked up and you wrote it there. In fact, some sentences I would like to give as an example, which I see especially when people tend to write their thesis statement, such as this essay will discuss, or as you see on the screen, the following paragraphs will highlight. So they tend to paraphrase the topic, but when they are close to telling their thesis statement, they end up writing it this way. So my suggestion to you would be, for instance, if the question is discuss the advantages and disadvantages of a particular thing that has been highlighted in the topic. So instead of writing that this essay will discuss the advantages and disadvantages, or the following paragraphs will highlight the advantages and disadvantages, I think more appropriate would be to make it more direct. Possibly you can write there are several merits and demerits to this approach. Or if let's say the question wants you to address whether you agree or disagree to it, rather than writing in this approach which says the following paragraphs will highlight my reasons of agreement to this topic, you can directly write, I agree to this view or I disagree to this view. So what you write with this approach, that is what you see in the red font, does not seem too appropriate. So please avoid that, because as you would progress in your essay, you would be using your own style of writing, and the examiner can easily gauge that you have tried memorizing from a template. Now, avoid using any kind of jargon or any kind of uncommon abbreviation. Now, for those people who still don't know what is a jargon can be any industry specific term. So it can be known to you, but it may not be known to some other people or even the reader for that matter. So never assume that what you know would be known by everybody. I would like to share a couple of examples that even I have come across when I assess different essays. So let's say these are certain parts that I've taken from my own students, saying that the IRDA states that people working in the EMEA region or professionals working as BM. Now the jargon here is BM, IRDA, EMEA region. I may not know what these are. So possibly you know that, but a reader sometimes may not be able to relate to it, as different abbreviations can have different expansions. So considering the fact that the expansion can vary depending on different regions, and your writing task can be assessed by anybody. So if you belong to, let's say, India, we really cannot assume the fact that it will be checked only by Indians. So whatever I write, whichever jargon I put into my writing, which is an Indian jargon, everybody would understand. So please don't be under that impression. One best approach would be to rather use the word in its expanded form and put the abbreviation in parentheses, that means in bracket. And if at all you need to use that word again, you can use the abbreviated form, such as people working in Europe, Middle East, and African region, and I have put EMEA in parentheses. And again, if I want to talk about Europe, Middle East, and Africa region, I can simply use the term EMEA because it has now been defined. So ensure that you're not making this mistake. Then comes the use of examples, and making the examples very long, very elaborate. That's one big mistake. So when you are trying to explain something, example has to be really concise. So it should be brief, it should be precise, rather than making a long narration of something happened, that something happened with you. So personal anecdotes are fine, but then it should not be written like a story, like a big story, which is covering about half a page or one page, because then your main ideas, it would be divided off the main ideas, and what you need to write is more main ideas and just short examples. Another thing is that these examples that you write, where should it be placed? It should be placed in a way that it is still connected to the idea that you wanted to convey. to which you required an exemplification. So I often see people starting the example with another fresh paragraph, which should never be done. Therefore, always put the example just after you have ended an idea which you wanted to support. So it should be placed in a way that it is supporting the preceding statement. And another common mistake is when people write, they read the topic and they start writing. So writing impromptu is one of the common mistakes, which leads you to definitely an average or below average score, but not a high score. That's because what you have written may be unplanned and it may be highly unorganized. And a task, if you want to receive a high score in the parameter called coherence and cohesion, it's imperative that you're brainstorming, you're planning the content, and you know which idea would be placed where. To go to the crux of this matter, I would say begin with the end in mind, because most of the people, despite a high range in grammar, a wide range of words that they use, and appropriate word choices they use, people lose marks because they're just writing impromptu. They go with the flow of thoughts and they start writing. The ideas, the thoughts may be valid, but they may lack cogent progression. And if that lacks, no wonder you would be losing marks. And if you're dreaming to get a 7 plus, this may be affecting your score. So I hope with these particular mistakes that I highlighted, you might have related to where, if you have taken IELTS already, you may relate to it where you might be losing score. So to make things simpler, let me give you a quick recap to whatever I have shared with you, what you should not be doing. Do not use contractions, especially when you are writing essays or any formal letters. Do not use the words you and we. Avoid using any jargon. If it is used, please use its expanded form as well along with it. No memorized thesis statement. And when you put an example, it should be concise and it should be put at the right place, and never start a paragraph with an example. And lastly, whatever you write, ensure that you're writing with proper planning. So if you found this video really informative, then please don't forget to like it. And for more such videos to get more gyan on IELTS and the use of English language, please subscribe to my channel, Learn with BKK. And do post in the comment section if you found any of the common mistakes uncommon for you or new for you, or whatever mistakes you had been doing and you got to know about it through this video. I would look forward to your responses, and if there are any queries, then please do post your queries at learnwithvkk@gmail.com. So I would see you once again in another useful video. Till then, bye-bye and happy learning.